Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying the show, do me one quick favor and leave us a 5-star rating and review. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, today we're going to be talking to David Meerman Scott. David Meerman Scott spotted the real-time marketing revolution in its infancy and wrote 5 books about it, including The New Rules of Marketing and PR, with more than 400,000 copies sold in English, and it's available in 29 languages from Albanian to Vietnamese. Now, his latest book, Fanocracy, taps into the mindset that relationships with customers are more important than the products they actually sell to them. Let's welcome to the show, David Meerman Scott.
Hey, John. So great to be here. Thank you very much for having me on.
David, I'm excited to talk to you. Thank you for coming on the show. You know, as an author and someone with a vast background in marketing, why don't you just really take a minute and fill in some of the gaps of how you even, fell into marketing and started penning your first book?
So when I got out of school, I thought I wanted to become a bond trader. So I started working on Wall Street and on a bond trading desk, and I hated it. It was terrible. It was just a whole bunch of young men screaming into telephones, which I did not like one bit. But what I really did like was the information that bond traders used from companies like Dow Jones and Reuters. So I spent 15 years in the real-time financial information business, 10 years of those in Asia. I was in Tokyo for 7 years, Hong Kong for 2 years. And then in 2002, the company I was working for, which is part of Thomson Reuters, fired me. And so that gave me an opportunity to go out on my own, and I've managed to make a good living, yet be unemployed for 18 years.
Wow. 18 years unemployed, making your own living. So how do you transition from being a bond, being in the bond space to the writing?
So to me, what was interesting was I worked in the marketing department for companies that delivered information to bond traders. So I got a head start on the internet in the sense that I already understood how real-time information worked in 1995 when the internet started. And so I was already someone who understood these ideas. So I started to do marketing in the online world before very many people were doing it. And I had some success with it, because I have had that experience already in understanding what online information was and how it works. So then when it was my turn to go out on my own, which was not voluntary, I might say, what I realized is I really do know a lot about online marketing, so I should put my shingle out. And originally I started to do consulting, and then I started to write a blog in 2004. And then my book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, came out originally in 2007. And so those ideas hit like crazy in 2007. The book became an instant bestseller, and it still continues to sell incredibly well. It's now in the 6th edition, soon to be the 7th edition.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit about that book, right? So New Rules of Marketing and PR. Obviously, a lot has changed over the last, 12, 13 years. But when you wrote that book, what were some of the key principles that you put in that book that really stood out and resonated with readers?
So the main thing I noticed is that the ways that most organizations were generating attention weren't working as well anymore. So one way that companies were generating attention in the last decade or 2 decades ago is by spending money on advertising. Another way to generate attention was to hire a PR agency and try to influence the media to write about you or broadcast about you. Those ideas weren't working so well anymore. But what was working was creating original content on the web and publishing it. And then a little bit later, with the rise of social networks like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and others, using social networks to get noticed. So that's what the book is about, New Rules of Marketing and PR, is the idea of we can control our own marketing, creating our own content, reaching people through social networks, and not just have to resort to buying advertising or trying to convince the media to write about us.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the difference between paid and earned in some ways, right?
Yeah,
where,
very much so.
Yeah, so like, for those who aren't deep into the marketing space, paid is kind of the advertising you're talking about that's paying for an ad to run on TV or radio or online. And earned is more, you try to get that from PR where someone runs their story. But if you're creating your own content as well, doing more content marketing because you're writing a blog post or you're creating a podcast or creating these videos, now people are consuming this content. They're getting a better sense of who you are. And ideally, they're transitioning from a consumer of information to a consumer of your products and services.
Exactly right. Couldn't say it better myself. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, that book, and to, those concepts, we've seen that become more and more popular, especially over the last decade, to your point, where social media has absolutely exploded. And just by, posting on social media frequently, brands have been able to build a huge following. But this isn't limited to the big boys in branding. You have a lot of influencers, you have a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs who are able to get the word out about their business and what they do leveraging these platforms. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the rise of that everyday person, that influencer, that solo entrepreneur using these platforms to kind of level the playing field?
Yeah, there's no question that anybody with a keyboard or a smartphone has the same access as any television station or radio station out there. So it's just a matter of creating valuable content at the time that people need it and pushing it out into the universe through a social network, or I actually suggest also through your own real estate. So what I mean by that is, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all the other social networks, those are ultimately controlled by the social networks. However, if you have your own website or your own blog, you can control that real estate. Google will index it, and pushing that information out steadily and regularly over time should allow you to generate attention of your own content on your own real estate.
Why do you think that's important?
It's important because you never know what's going to happen with the social networks. So, for example, Google Plus was a very important social network. It was the Google version of Facebook. Started about 10 years ago. It had tens of millions of users, but Google abruptly canceled it. They completely got rid of it. It no longer exists. So if you had built your whole reputation on Google Plus, all of a sudden, everything disappears. All your content disappears. All of your relationships disappear. If you were using that for your marketing, all of your marketing disappears. And if you're on Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is, and then they change the way that their algorithm works, you may not get as much notice as you're getting now. And the social networks are constantly changing their algorithms. But once you have your own real estate that people can go to, that's something that you control. I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think your points there are spot on, especially when you talk about the algorithms. How hard is it to get organic reach on Facebook right now for any kind of business message,
it's
right?
Really, really hard. Or because Facebook is now optimized around you paying them for reach. And so just getting organic is really, really hard. But as soon as you give them money, all of a sudden your content gets shown to other people.
Yeah. So, great points there about really controlling your content, who it gets out to. I would say even, I was reading an article yesterday and it was talking about backing up your contacts. So even if you have your website or you have an email list, making sure you download those contacts and download that or back up that information, because the website can crash or, there could be something with the FCC or whatever the case may be. And you just never know what happens to this content. So if you don't, as you're putting it out there, you hope you can continue to control your listeners, your audience, your readers. But again, there's a lot of different factors there. So just making sure you're being proactive about protecting that audience. So you're not waking up one day and then having to start over from zero.
I think that's right. And I think one way to protect your audience is make sure that you control it, not the social networks controlling it.
Yeah, great points there. So I want to fast forward. I know that you're getting ready to release the seventh edition, right?
Yeah.
Of the new. So what can readers expect? I mean, what's changed from maybe the last edition to this edition, where you've now revised kind of the last version of that book?
The main thing with this new edition, the seventh edition, is that there's a new chapter on artificial intelligence in marketing. And so, the rise of AI and machine learning is really important because there's so many different aspects of AI that become part of the way that anybody does their marketing. And so I just wanted to get some of that information into the book. And so that book comes out in May of 2020. And that new chapter, it's not going to be enough for people to begin doing artificial intelligence, basically meant as an education so that you understand it. The artificial intelligence is everywhere. When you fire up Google Maps, for example, or Apple Maps, that's all artificial intelligence driven, because basically what you're talking about is a data set that's so enormous that humans can't make sense of it. And if you're looking at all the different roads and traffic patterns and so on, that's a data set that humans can't make sense of. Netflix is another of those streaming services, are another heavy users of artificial intelligence, because if I go into Netflix and I choose a couple of movies, a couple of TV series, Netflix now figures out what are the kinds of things I like. They can serve me more things that I like. Again, that's too big a data set for humans to be able to understand. The same thing is happening in marketing, that some of the data sets are so big. Everybody on Twitter is a data set. And if you understand what people are doing on Twitter using some tools, you can do better marketing as a result. So I just provide some basic information in this new chapter about what you need to know to understand artificial intelligence, because it's coming. It's in lots of different other fields, and we use it every day, and it's coming to marketing.
And it makes sense when you think about some of the large applications like Google Maps and Netflix. And, I was reading something, actually, that's, I probably shouldn't share that. It's confidential. But what I will say is, I know that there are companies out there that are really starting to use AI based on your purchase behavior. Yes. To predict your order and basically just have you confirm your order when you arrive. And it's before they even have to talk to you. You just show up, you get close to the vicinity. So it's not Starbucks, but I'm sure they're doing it too. But you get close to Starbucks and they pretty much know what you've ordered based on your history, the credit card transactions and all of that. And they just ask you, hey, John, do you want the same thing you always get? Hit the confirm button, and you don't have to really interact with the barista because everything is, automated through this artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's a good example too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, like, for more of the people who are listening to this, or not marketing executives trying to figure out how to leverage it, right? How do we tap into some of the AI and some of the technologies that's coming down the pipeline?
Well, it's important to recognize that some of the tools that you may already be using in your marketing are AI driven. So, for example, if you're using Google AdWords, or you're using the other social networks advertising platforms like Twitter and Facebook, there's a lot of AI tools built into them. So having an understanding of how artificial intelligence works, and it's basically just a set of mathematical rules set on top of a huge, enormous database. If you understand the basics around that, then you can make better use of the engines that are underlying advertising platforms like Google AdWords or Facebook advertising or Twitter advertising. And then you can better target your potential customers armed with that understanding. So that's something that all of us can use today, right now, around artificial intelligence, because even a tiny little business of one person can make use of these platforms.
Yeah, it seems like there's obviously AI is larger than SEO, but it sounds like SEO is probably more of a sub-segment of AI. Is that fair to say?
Well, search engine optimization is SEO. There's lots of different aspects of search engine optimization. And in my mind, the main thing with SEO is to have great content. And so that's not really necessarily AI driven. But once you create a blog post, for example, AI can help you to understand what should the blog post title be, what should the call to action be, where should the call to action appear, what are some of the other things that AI can help us to identify. So there's lots of different uses of AI within search engine optimization, and the more that we understand the basics of AI, and most people don't, then the more we can understand how we might be able to make use of it in our own business.
Yeah, no, that's great information there. And I love that, it's interesting because I'm thinking about just so many other applications, man, from, we've got all of our smart devices, right? We have our Alexas and our Siris, and there's so many other things from a data standpoint that we can start tapping into. So really lots of opportunity. Obviously, we need to keep our eyes open to what's coming down the pipeline. I think one of the changes that's taken place over the last decade or so is because it is so much easier for brands and individuals to get their message across. You have like a proliferation of options available to you. So I know your latest book, Fanocracy, starts to talk about, what brands need to do to win today, because it's different than maybe what we need to do 10, 15, 20 years ago. Can you start talk a little bit more about kind of that shift that you've seen and why brands need to change up how we play?
Yeah, and thank you very much for asking it in that way, talking about the new rules of marketing and PR first, because I'm a little bit conflicted, because the new rules of marketing and PR continues to do extremely well. It sells lots and lots of copies, but too many people are abusing some of those channels. What they're doing is they're, for example, going on LinkedIn and then just randomly connecting with a whole bunch of people, and then when they accept it, trying to sell them something. Or you've got websites that have so many advertisements on them that you can hardly find the real content. And the social networks themselves are part of the problem, because, as we talked about earlier, they're optimized for profit, not for showing your content organically to people. The social networks actually are optimized around polarization. They want to drive you into a group of people, and that way they can show you a certain type of content and less than you as a well-rounded person. So I think that the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of superficial online communications at a time when all of us are hungry for a true human connection. And so I decided to dig into this idea of a true human connection, specifically the idea of fandom. I'm a huge music fan. I've seen 804 live music concerts in my life. I keep a spreadsheet. That's how much of a geek I am. And I was talking to my daughter, Reiko. She's now 27. And when we first started talking, she was 21 years old. And I said, Reiko, you and I are both massive fans. I'm a fan of live music. I've seen 75 Grateful Dead concerts, which is weird. And Reiko is a huge Harry Potter fan. She's read every book multiple times, seen every movie multiple times. And she even wrote an 85,000-word alternative ending to the Harry Potter series, where Draco Malfoy is a spy for the Order of the Phoenix, and put that on a fan fiction site and been read by thousands of people. So we decided that when we're a fan of something, that transcends all of that superficial online garbage. And so we wanted to collaborate in what eventually became our book, Fanocracy, collaborate to research the whole idea of fandom with the goal of trying to understand, can any business develop fans? And the answer is yes. Any business can develop fans.
Wow. So first of all, how many concerts did you say you've been to?
804. And yes, I keep a spreadsheet. So I know, I know it's really kind of ridiculous, but I love it. And you know, here's the thing that's interesting. I figure I've spent, the first concert I saw when I was 15 years old. Over the last 40 years, I've probably spent $500,000 on concerts, whether that's for the tickets, the transportation to get there, you know, the beer in the venue. So fandom drives buying decisions. There's no question about it. I've spent $500,000 on my love of live music.
So, and you mentioned your love is live music. Your daughter's love is more kind of in the sci-fi space a little bit more. And I know before we hit record, you were telling me how passionate she is in that space, not just writing the 85,000 word alternate ending to Harry Potter, but you said she's into some other things as well, right?
Yeah, she's really into Comic-Con. She and her friends get dressed up and go to Comic-Con every year. She's very into speculative fiction and into graphic novels. So, yeah, and so we're interested in very different things. We're very different people. She's a millennial woman, and she's mixed race. My wife's Japanese, so Reiko was born in Tokyo. And meanwhile, I'm a middle-aged white guy. And so we come at it from really, really different perspectives, but we had the same idea of fandom and how important it is in our lives. And that's why we wanted to explore it together. Because, you know, how does fandom affect a young millennial woman? How does fandom affect a middle-aged man? And that is something that we just wanted to explore deeply. And it turns out that both of us had the same ideas of fandom, even though we had different things that we were a fan of.
So I think when you talk about fandom, and you mentioned earlier the need for human connection, and I think that is really an interesting observation, especially in this world where it's so easy to be quote unquote connected to so many people anywhere in the globe, and Facebook groups, or, you know, so many other things where you can connect with people, yet that human interaction still seems to be missing. So I want to talk a little bit more about fandom and kind of what that means, right? I think it's easy to think about, I should say it's easier to recognize fandom in the sense of music or books or sports. We started talking a little bit about business and how businesses can kind of create fans. Can you just elaborate a little bit more there?
Yeah, sure. So one thing we talked about before you hit record is that my daughter Reiko is also a neuroscientist. She graduated with a neuroscience degree from Columbia University. She's now in her final year of medical school and will graduate in just a couple of months and become an emergency room doctor. So it was important for both of us that we dig into the neuroscience aspect of fandom. What's going on in our brains when we become a fan of something? And it's really interesting, John, because what's happening is all of us humans have an innate desire that's hardwired into our brains to want to be part of a tribe of like-minded people. Because when you're with your tribe of like-minded people, you feel safe and secure and comfortable. And that goes back tens of thousands of years of human history, that when you're with your tribe, you're safe and comfortable. If you're not within your tribe, you're vulnerable to attack. It's dangerous. And so what's happening in our brain when we become a fan of something is we're saying, this is my tribe. These are the people I trust. These are my friends. So if I'm at a Grateful Dead concert, and I've been to 75 of them, I can turn to anybody I meet maybe we're waiting in line for a beer. I can start having a conversation with them as if we've known each other for a long time because we're part of the same tribe. And that's really, really, really powerful. There's one neuroscientist who identified the different levels of proximity that can help to predict this idea of tribes. His name is Edward T. Hall. And further than 12 feet away, he called public space. And in public space, we humans know that other people are there, but we don't track them. Inside of 12 feet to about 4 feet is called social space. And in social space, our brains begin to track those people because we need to know, are they part of our tribe and therefore we're safe? Or are they not part of our tribe and therefore there's danger? And inside of 4 feet is called personal space. That's even more powerful. And so this explains why when you walk into a crowded room, you immediately begin scanning that room. Sometimes you don't even know you're doing it. You can't help it because you're looking for your tribe. You're looking for people you know. And once you find them, you feel safe and comfortable. However, if you get into a crowded elevator and you don't know any of the people in that elevator with you, you're in close physical proximity, you cannot help but feel nervous because your brain is saying, danger, danger, this is not my tribe. So what this means for all of us who are running businesses is there a way that you can bring people together, like-minded people, to have them connect with one another, because that true human connection begins to build a tribe of people. But there's one more aspect I want to talk about that's really interesting, another aspect of neuroscience. It's called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the part of our brains that fire when we see somebody do something or even hear somebody do something as if we're doing it ourselves, which I'll demonstrate now with a lemon, and I have a slice of lemon. So if I take a bite of this lemon, wow, it's really, really powerful. My eyes close and they're watering a little bit. My mouth puckers up and my saliva glands are doing their thing. It's a really powerful thing to bite into a lemon. And by seeing me do that, John, I bet you're tasting some lemon right now, aren't you?
Tasting it.
Tasting it. It's crazy. And even if there's people who are only listening and not seeing me do that, they're feeling that same thing on their tongue as well. So here's where this becomes really interesting to build fans. You can virtually create proximity as if you're 4 feet from somebody by using video and photographs. That's exactly what we're doing right now, John, by using the video cameras as we're recording this. Our brains, our mirror neurons, tell us that we're actually in the same room together having this conversation, even though intellectually we know we're not. This is precisely why you feel you know a movie star, even though you've never met that movie star. You feel like you know a movie star. But your brain and my brain right now, we intellectually know that it's just a camera. You're thousands of miles away from me, perhaps. But our brain tells us through mirror neurons we're in the same room. So this is something every single person who's listening into this can do to build fans of their business. Can you use video, even photographs, effectively, cropped as if you're 4 feet away? That's personal space, looking directly at the camera in a natural kind of way, talking to that camera, creating a YouTube channel, creating a video podcast, connecting on an individual basis, one customer at a time using video. Incredibly powerful way to build fans.
What a phenomenal insight right there you just shared with us. I mean, you mentioned about Edward T. Hall and 12 feet away, 4 to 12 feet, we're kind of scanning to see, who's in our tribe. And then within kind of 4 feet, that's really our personal space, and using video as a way to connect with people to build our tribe. That's really strong. I was actually going to ask you about different tactics like meetup events and kind of live in-person events versus kind of online or virtual things. What do you think about building your tribe through kind of in-person events as well?
Oh, absolutely. In-person events were great. And we've run across a number of different organizations who's done a great job there. A surprising example is auto insurance. So most people hate auto insurance, right? It's a terrible thing to spend money on. And furthermore, you never want to use the product because it means you've crashed your car. So we were speaking with McKeel Haggerty. He's the CEO of Haggerty Insurance. They do classic car auto insurance. So what they do is they go to over 100 classic car auto shows a year in North America. And they're there meeting with people who are already fans of classic cars. They're interacting. They're in their personal space. They're in their social space. They're meeting thousands over the course of a year. They're meeting tens of thousands of people who are fans of classic cars. And they're also doing it in a virtual way. They have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. Can you imagine an auto insurance company with over 1 million subscribers on their YouTube channel? And they've done a fabulous job. They're the largest classic car auto insurance company in the world. And they've built their whole business on fans because they recognized McKeel Haggerty told me that I don't want to be the low cost provider, and I don't want to try to spend more money on advertising than everybody else. But having more fans than everybody else, that's something I can do. So yes, absolutely. Meeting physically with people the way that Haggerty Insurance does, absolutely. But many of our businesses don't lend themselves to that physical connection. Maybe we run virtual businesses, or maybe we've got clients who are all over the world. So this virtual idea can help as well.
No, I love it. Those are really strong, powerful ideas right there to help us connect with people and create those fans. One last question here is, as we think of clients or customers in a more traditional sense versus fans, there's obviously a leap, right? There's a little bit of a gap to get someone from being a prospect or a lead to an actual customer or client, and then ultimately to being a fan. What are some of the, some of the key steps, or maybe even some big mistakes from trying to take that passionate client or customer from just a good customer to an actual fan?
Yeah, good question. So a couple things that come to mind. The first one is that to truly build fans, you need to recognize that people want more than just your product or service. They may have come to you originally just for that product or service, but to become a fan, they want more. They want a true human connection. They want to know who you are as people. The second thing that's really interesting to us is we found so many examples of passion as being the most important thing for building fans, because passion is infectious. So when you show passion to the world, and it doesn't even have to be for your business, but when you show that you're passionate about something, people are naturally drawn to you. So we found a dentist. His name is Dr. John Marashi. He's a dentist in Southern California. And he came to me at a Tony Robbins event. I speak at all of Tony Robbins' Business Mastery events. And he came to me and said, David, I like your ideas, but what can I do? I'm a dentist. There's tens of thousands of dentists in Southern California. How can I compete? And I said, Dr. Marashi, what do you love to do? And he says, I love to skateboard. So I said, well, that's cool. Let's celebrate your love of skateboarding. So now on the walls of his dental practice are skateboards. He skateboards from one examination room to the other examination rooms. And he's got photos on his website of him skateboarding. He's got an Instagram feed with 14,000 subscribers. And many of the photos he shares on videos he shares on his Instagram are of him skateboarding. And Dr. Marashi contacted me a couple of months ago and said, David, this idea you shared with me, it grew my business by 30% last year. And it doesn't surprise me because passion is infectious. So when you're passionate about something, and it doesn't have to be your work, but passionate about something in your private life that rubs off into your work, and people naturally want to do business with you. So in Dr. Marashi's case, he's not one of 10,000 dentists competing for business in Southern California. He's the only skateboarding dentist.
Love it. Phenomenal insight there. Thank you, David. We're going to move on to our bullseye round. You ready?
Uh-oh. Sounds dangerous.
It might be. I don't know. We'll see. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success?
Oh, we already talked about it a little bit. I was fired. I was fired back in 2002. And at the time, I was devastated. I lost my life, my livelihood. I lost my what I identified myself as. But it was fabulous because it was my catalyst to actually going out on my own. And I've been happily out on my own for 18 years now.
What book have you gifted or recommended the most in the last year?
The book would be called Music, A Subversive History. And I love this book because Music, A Subversive History is an alternative history of music, not told around the most famous musicians, but around the most subversive musicians, the ones who have truly changed culture.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I love something called Text Expander. And I'm not sure if it works for the PC, but I use it on the Mac. And what it does is it allows you to save keystrokes because it will memorize things that you type frequently, such as your address or other things.
All right, give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I exercise every day, no excuses. And I mix it up. I do different things. I swim, I do Pilates, I do yoga, I do weights. And it's really helps me to keep focused.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
That business should be fun. That business isn't about drudgery and going to the office and, working and then you can't wait for the 5 o'clock bell. Business should be fun. And if it's not fun, you got to change what you're doing.
What advice would you give to a smart-driven college student about the real world?
Similar to what I just said in the last question and answer, I think you really need to find what you're passionate about. And just going to a job is not going to be fun. And if you're going to do it for 40 years, can you imagine not having fun for 40 years? But instead, think about what it is you love and how can you figure out how to create a career around that.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm always curious about everything. As we're recording this, I have to admit I'm very curious about where this whole coronavirus is going to take us. As we're recording this, they're reporting that there's 10,000 people in the world affected. I'm wondering if 6 months from now, if it's going to be in the millions. And I'm really curious about. It's tragic, but curious about where this is going to go.
All right. We didn't get into where you live. What part of the country are you in?
I live outside of Boston.
All right. So you're in Boston. Give me the best place to grab a bite next time we're in Boston.
Best place to grab a bite when we're in Boston. We have a fabulous pizza place called Pizzeria Regina. I've always loved them. I thought they were fabulous. I travel to get there because I love the pizza so much, and they were recently ranked #1 in the country. So I guess they got something going for them.
There you go. Good selection there. David, you gave us a lot of great information from the new rules of marketing and PR to understanding how to, leverage fandom and create fandom to drive our business. Thank you for sharing all those great insights with us. For our listeners who want to check out the books or maybe even learn a little bit more about you and get in touch, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on. So if you want to learn a little bit about me, my My main website is davidmeermanscott.com. You can learn a ton about Fanocracy, lots of free content there at www.fanocracy.com. The social network I'm the most active in is Twitter, and my Twitter is DM Scott, DMSCOTT.
David, thank you again for coming on Target Market Insights. Great time talking to you. We hope you have a great day, okay?
Thanks, John. You too.